Oh,
Hello, Thomas.
so
Yeah,
so how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself, Thomas?
Yeah, I'm fine, mate. Do your
Mm.
interview now
Yeah.
and get going, and we'll see where we go. And I'll be as honest as I will be. So
Mm.
I know your uncle Graham.
Graham, yes.
So we could talk about him as well if you want. But sure, go
Yeah.
ahead and start it, and I'll be.
Well, what got you into music, like? Because I read a lot about you, but I want to know from you, how did you get into music yourself?
It's just sometimes like yourself. I'm sure that you don't. You just wake up one day and you go, oh, I love music and I want to be involved in it, or I want to buy records, or I want to buy CDs, or I want to download this, or I want
That's
to.
the exact thing. That's the exact thing. It was
Yeah.
one day my dad put down CDs from the attic, and I was like 6 maybe. And I asked him, what are all these? And he played one for me, and I went, I'm into music. And that's how I got into it. And then
Well,
you
it just
was
shows you. Yeah. I mean, I'm 53 this year, and what are you? You're nine now, are
10
you?
at the moment. I'm 10
You're
and I'm
10.
nearly 11.
But
I've
there's
been
no
into music
difference.
for 5, maybe 6 years.
Yeah, that's exactly the
In a
same.
couple, in like when I turn 11, it'll probably be 7 years then. Because like I got into music when I was like 4.
Yeah,
And then
and
you must have got into music at an early age because you're very good at making music, especially with Pugwash and the Duckworth Lewis Method and stuff.
well, thank you very much. Well, yeah, the thing I remember mainly is I used to go fishing to Dunleary with my brother, and I was only about 6, maybe. And we'd go out for the day, and he'd bring me, and we'd sit on the pier, and we'd have a tape recorder, like a tape player. And yeah,
Yeah, cassettes.
yes, cassettes. Yes, well done. That's good. And we'd have batteries, of course, because you couldn't, you could plug it into anything or whatever. So be sitting there in the sun fishing. I'd be just watching, and my brother would play the cassette player, and it was ELO, it was the Electric Light Orchestra,
Ah, ELO, yeah.
and I'm a big, big, big ELO fan, and it was like Face the Music. So it was the song, it was the album with Evil Woman, the Evil Woman song,
I think I
and
know which album that is, but I forget the name. But I can see the album cover in my head.
well, it was Face the Music,
Yeah, that
1975, and and we had it on cassette. So, but what happened was then after about an hour, it would be like playing the song, and it would go whoa, whoa, because the battery started wearing out. So
oh
it would
my
start
god.
playing slow, and I always have memories of slow music and stuff like that as well, because battery's running out and all that.
God,
So
it's kind of like you're saying you grew up with ELO, but you also grew up with jazz, and it was so slow. And it was
yeah,
kind of like jazz.
yes, it was
Like
becoming,
jazz music.
alternative music. But yes, the so the memories are of my brother playing music, and me kind of going, well, I really like that, and
Yeah.
my dad played a lot of the Carpenters and Perry Como and people like this, and Frank Sinatra and ABBA.
Frank Sinatra, yeah.
Yeah, ABBA were huge as well in Ireland, and Gilbert O'Sullivan.
I've never heard of Gilbert O'Sullivan now.
Well, he's one you'll really like. He's still playing. He's still alive and well, and still
Still alive and
touring.
kicking, yeah.
Yes, and he had a few songs which you may know when you hear them.
Yeah, them kind of songs.
And but he's originally from Waterford in Ireland, but he went to live in England in Swindon, and
Yeah.
became this huge uh, star in around 1970, 71. And he used to dress like a school kid. So
Once you said that, immediately ACDC came into my head. Like, I know it's totally not to do with it, but just
no, it
right
is
away.
because
And it's nice to hear about Irish bands because I
yeah,
am Irish. And it's good to hear about all these. Like, I live in Kildare, and I love all those different type of bands where, like, when I'm listening to the radio, I love when people mention this is Irish. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of music out there that's English, that's American, but it's nice to hear a bit of Irish music as well.
Well, that's the thing. I suppose in my day, you had to go, you had to go to shops and you had to get information off people who worked in the shop, and you had to buy maybe or read a magazine or something, or a fanzine, as we call them,
Yeah, fanzines. My
yeah,
dad told me like that in his class or somewhere, people used to make mini fanzines and like
yeah.
photocopy them and then sell them to everyone. And I always thought
And
that was cool that they done that.
they were great, and a lot of bands would work in conjunction with the fanzine people, and a lot of fanzine people became very famous in the re-release of these bands' old material eventually, because I know a couple of guys who did fanzines and they went on to work for EMI, working on back catalogue releases, with CDs and all. So they became a kind of well-known people in the history of these
In those
bands. So,
sectors, yeah.
and they started off with fanzines. So it's always, there were such a wealth of information anyway back then, because there was no internet and stuff like that. So so that was the fun thing about finding bands back then. But nowadays you would still have to look around to hear an Irish band, because they're not easy to find, because they're not
Yeah.
played on the radio a lot and they're not shown on TV a lot. And so there is still the same problem, really.
Now, I think we've kind of already touched off this, but why did you yourself get into music? Like, was there anything that kind of like clicked in your mind and you just went, I'm going to get, you kind of want, that made you want to go into music?
Well, yeah, it was definitely, just ELO for me. When I heard them, the music was very, I couldn't really understand everything I was hearing at that age. It was kind of like, it just sounded fantastic. And so I just
You're
wanted
more listening to the instruments than the lyrics.
Well, yeah, well, Jeff Lynne's not he's not famous for his lyrics, really. He's a bit of a moon, loon, spoon, June, as we'd say, because
Yeah.
he's an easy rhymist, really. But things like Mr. Blue Sky are great lyrically,
Yeah.
They're
And
great
ELO
lyrically.
have made it big.
Oh, well,
ELO
they're a huge
really
band,
big. And they're still going, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he still plays and still records music as Jeff Lynne's ELO. But he was the main thing for me about music, because I just absolutely loved what I heard with ELO. So they became my life. I'd wake up and just want to start playing their records, and I'd start looking in the magazines to buy their records. So I'd only get £2 a week pocket money.
Yeah.
How much does your dad give you pocket money?
Well, the thing is, I don't get pocket money, but like if I do like a chore or like I find something, I might get like some money. And then for my communion, I got loads of money, and everybody
Brilliant.
else was like buying different stuff. And I bought a record player, and I bought loads of records to play along with it. And
Well,
the first record I bought was The Wall by Pink Floyd, and
who was it?
Pink Floyd, The Wall.
The Wall. My God, there's a toughie to. That's brilliant. Wow.
It's kind of a hard album to understand, though, if you know what I mean. Like
It is.
some parts of it are kind of like the last two songs are eerie, but I really like the album and the style of Pink Floyd. I love those songs.
Did you get Dark Side of the Moon eventually, or did you?
I didn't, and I kept going into record shops, and like I went, I have to get Dark Side of the Moon. It's one of those things that you say you're gonna do, and then like once it comes to you, you're like, oh look, there's another record that I know. I'll get that.
Exactly.
But I'm definitely gonna look into getting Dark Side of the Moon, because Pink Floyd are fabulous, and I think one of the other albums I bought was a single, and it was an orange record, and it was Living in a Ghost Town by the Rolling Stones. It was a new single, and it's amazing as well. That usually you don't buy records if you think you might not like it because they're €20. Like, they're not cheap. You want to savor the record. You want to spend hours looking at the album covers, the details, and listening to the music bit by bit.
Well, it's amazing to hear. It's like you sound like me, you know, when I was your age. So I'm very, very proud of you, you know, that you do that because I tell you, with album covers as well, you just stare at them. So yeah, you're right. You put the record on and you just look at the cover, and every song that played, you know, you'd find something in your head to do with that cover. You'd be just so it
Exactly.
wouldn't make any difference. You wouldn't have to read stuff. You wouldn't have to, you know, it was all about just looking at the artwork and smelling the album. Do you smell your albums?
I've never done it, but it sounds like a thing I
Yes.
do because I smell books.
Yes, of
You get a
course.
book and you
Same.
just flick it. It smells really nice because
Yes.
so many people have read it that you feel like you're smelling all the different people who have read it, and it's like going through the past.
Yes.
Books
Well, some of the
and
old
albums.
records, when you put your nose in, you go, "Wow, what the hell was that?" Because you know, there's
Yeah,
a
and
lot
it's
of
not a bad smell as well.
no.
God,
It's
we're
not. I
talking about
won't, I
smell.
won't hurt you. It's not harmful. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It just can evoke a lot of memories, and even the new stuff smells great as well, though. You know, so it's just so smells and visuals, and of course, then you have the ear. So it's all the senses you're hitting. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, touch as well when you hold the record. Sometimes the covers are embossed. You know, with the name is sticks up off the sleeve, and you can rub your finger
Yeah.
on it, and you know, so it's all touch, smell, hear, taste.
Though, like I use Spotify myself. People use Deezer, Apple Music, that kind of thing. But sometimes you've just got to go hard copy. Like, I would never, ever listen to Stiff Upper Lip by AC/DC on Spotify. Yet, I'd sit down and I'd listen to it on my stereo through a tape. Because I think it's horrible that people aren't selling tapes anymore. Because they're just as good quality, and CDs are easier to break, and same with records.
Yeah,
But tapes are harder and better material. Now, I'm
yeah,
not
and
pro tape. Like, I love CDs and I love records, but tape should be brought back too.
oh well, cassettes. Well, in a way, you know, they kind of are because the last uh, a couple of friends of mine are starting to bring out that format again because vinyl is so difficult to because there's such a waiting list on vinyl.
See, that's the thing. When I look for a record, I think altogether I look through 4 shops and to find the proper one. And I got this nice one here. It looks like a suitcase, but it's actually a thing. And there's a lot of money put into albums. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I've spent €2 on vinyls. 200 euros, sorry. Because
Yeah,
like, I was looking there in like golden discs and I saw an album for €100. And I went, that's why you need to think about getting a record player. There's a lot of stuff put into it. You've got to really agree with the record, basically. You've got to really like it. And the likes of Pink Floyd, The Wall, and Paul Weller on Sunset, I love those albums.
oh cool. You're a Paul Weller fan.
I like some mod stuff, yeah, and like his album True Meanings, that was amazing, and other bands that were to do with him were amazing too.
So have you got any of the Jam? Have you listened to the Jam?
Yes, I've listened to the Jam actually.
Well, it's you know, I'm just when I saw you on I got a message off you about Graham, and which was really nice. But then I had a look at a few of your video, I had a listen and all that stuff, and I was thinking, wow, this is this chap is very much like me when I was growing up in the '70s, uh, and it was inspiring really because it's great to see. Because I think a lot of times, with kids nowadays, there's a lot of things about about, oh, they shouldn't hear that or they shouldn't do that, and it's all about protection really, which is important. But I start getting into
Sometimes it can be overprotective. I know, like,
well, when it comes to, well, a lot of people under that category, a lot of people don't really respect kids that they can fall in love with music at 4 and 5 years of age, and
exactly. Like, I love music, and I have for 6 years, and I'm 10. I
yeah,
love music. At one stage, everybody knew me because I was such a big fan of AC/DC.
yeah.
That's how big a fan I was, that everybody knew me because of it.
Well, did you? Well, while you're talking about, because you obviously you're a big fan of AC/DC, who are brilliant, but there's a couple of, I know a guy. I'm friends with a guy called Ken Schaefer, and Ken basically is a brilliant inventor and designer and stuff, and he invented the pedal that Angus Young uses since 1975, 76. And the thing was, I'm good friends with the famous Russian singer Boris Grebenshchikov, and Boris and Ken are great friends because Ken went to live in Russia years ago. And when I was in Russia with my girlfriend a few years ago, we
Yes.
went to see Boris. Now Boris is like, he's like, let's say in Irish terms, he's like the biggest star. He's like Ireland's
He's,
biggest star
he's
as a
like the
singer.
Ed Sheeran of Ireland.
Yeah, he's exactly, he's huge, and there's famous pictures of him with David Bowie when they used to hang out, and George Harrison in his house in England and stuff. So he's a very famous guy, very famous band, and they were called Aquarium. And there's a great documentary on YouTube about Aquarium when they went to America in the 80s, because they were the first band to leave Russia and go and play in the West. So they meet, like, Crosby, Stills and Nash and Neil Young and all those famous people. They all wanted to meet him and all that stuff. So he's a very famous guy. When I went to see Boris, Ken was there. And if you Google Ken Schaefer, it's Schaefer or something like that. You'll see loads of pictures of him with Angus Young, because they're still great friends. And he designed a pedal that Angus uses to this day. It's like a vintage sound. But what happened with Ken was also invented a famous pickup for cellos. So he helped ELO in their touring days. So he invented this thing where they could run around the stage playing a cello and not have to have it plugged in, really. It was like a
wireless.
Yeah, exactly, a wireless pickup. So he's a very famous guy, and I didn't know about his connection to AC/DC until after I met him, because he was talking more about ELO with me because he knew I was a fan. But then again, I just keep seeing pictures of Ken with Angus Young on Facebook, and next time I speak to him, I'll tell him there's a great young fan in Ireland of AC/DC, and their legacy lives on. So I'll tell him. And also, I just wanted to say, have you ever delved backwards in the history of AC/DC? Because there's a very brilliant band who, if you go to Sky Arts or whatever your Sky box, there's a documentary on their life called The Easy Beats. And the Easy Beats were the start of AC/DC in the 60s. So if you check, it's called Friday on My Mind. It was a very famous song they released. And they were Australian, obviously, and but they were all like from Leeds and from Scotland, because Angus Young is Scottish. So you see the story of that band.
Sorry, was Angus Young in that band? Was it
his brother was?
Oh.
And the lead singer was this chap, Steve Wright. That's him there. Look.
Oh, him.
And I got a little T-shirt made of him. I'm a big fan of the Easy Beats, so you should check out that. You'd love the movie. It's actors playing them. It's called Friday on My Mind, but it's brilliant, and it really uses all the original music. And you hear they were a great band, and very similar, to AC/DC. And the guys from that band produced the very first AC/DC records that you love. So it's all connected in. So it's great when you can go back, like, I know Foo Fighters and bands like that and Green Day introduced a lot of young people to Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and all. And
Yeah,
that's great. So always when you love a band, the great fun that I used to have was looking back further and you
yeah.
find some amazing. So Pink Floyd, I mean, have you gone back to the 60s with Pink Floyd?
I haven't.
Well, that's going to be fun because they were very different.
I can only imagine.
Yes. And they had their very famous guy, Sid Barrett. That's the guy who was the leader of the band then. And he was very important. And Wish You Were Here was written about, or Shine On You Crazy Diamond was written
Yeah,
about Sid Barrett. But it's a very sad story with Sid. The terrors of drugs. And but it's all very educational, and the Pink Floyd stuff in the 60s was brilliant. So
yeah,
that's worth checking out as well. But you'll find that eventually when you delve back further into history.
yeah. Now, there's two things that I want to ask you. This is to do with your bands.
Yes.
So, Duckworth Lewis Method. Are you still into cricket? And if you are, have you ever played cricket?
Well, as you can see, I'm a portly chap, which means I'm fat. So my physical attributes are limited at this stage of my life. But I used to play cricket as a kid, and I played a few funny games, a few jokey games around the time of Duckworth Lewis when I was on Cricket AM, Soccer AM. That's on Sky Sports. So when we went over, we did Cricket AM, and I had to stand there and try and hit a ball, which was fun. But so I love the game. I don't really play. I wouldn't play anymore, but I did back in the day, and I just loved it because I seen the Ashes in 1981 when Ian Botham hit the ball all over the place, and it was just brilliant because it's a sport. Ultimately, it's not anything to do. I didn't think about it being a colonial English thing or a
Yeah.
political thing. It's just a great game,
And did you hear who so I'm gonna try and get you to guess a person. Someone died today, and you sung about him.
Oh, who died today? Because I haven't been up on the news.
Shane Warne.
He died?
Yes, he died. 52 today. He died at 52 years of age. It's the 4th of March, and that's when he died.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
I know. When I heard that, I went to my mum. The guy who's in the Duckworth Lewis Method song. Yeah. No way.
Wow, that's incredible. I haven't checked the news all day, and it's funny. I've seen a few messages on my phone that must have been related to. Wow, my God. Does it say what he died of or what it was? Or
I do know what he died of. He died of a heart attack. A heart attack got him, unfortunately. Very young man, though. Very young.
Oh my God, and a very fit man, obviously.
Playing cricket like that.
Wow, wow. Well, that's I'll always remember now that you were the one to tell me because my girlfriend has told me a couple of classics. She told me when Prince died and when David Bowie died, she was there twice. And I often say, well, I remember that because you told me that. I remember Shane Warne because
Prince
Logan
was still alive. He would have been. If Prince and David Bowie were alive right now, they would still be massive.
Yeah.
They'd actually be massive.
Oh yeah. Well, David Bowie. I don't know whether you have much David Bowie, but he's a very important person to try.
I have one of his records actually, and Changes.
Oh, you have Changes, great. Well, that's got all the real classic stuff on it, and but he when these people were alive, and I was obviously alive and listening to them when they were releasing records.
Yeah.
That can have a real effect on how you listen to music later in life. Because when I heard things like Ashes to Ashes when it came out, and seeing the video, which was very revolutionary at the time, where he's walking on the beach and it's all kind of cartoonish and animated, and it's all beautifully shot. But it's very weird to see that as a 10-year-old. But also, he covered a song called Amsterdam, which was written by a guy called Jacques Brel. He was a French singer, very, very famous, a very revered French singer. And it was about sitting in the port of Amsterdam, drinking and eating fish. And when I was 5 or 6 years of age, that the imagery that gave me in my head was very weird. It was like, whoa, guy, he eats fish heads and he drinks, and he has a woman around. And I was only a kid listening to this, and it was like the visual aspect it gave me was huge. So some artists like Bowie they do affect you a lot because their music is very visual in your head. It gives you lots of imagery. I'm sure you get a lot of imagery when you listen to stuff as well.
Yeah, like No One Knows by Queens of Stone Age. Anybody who knows that song knows the video.
What song is that?
No One Knows by Queens of Stone Age. Have you ever heard of it, actually?
Which song is that, Logan? Sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
No One Knows.
Who was it by?
Queens of the Stone Age.
Ah, yes, of course, yes.
Their video, yeah.
Yes.
That was good as well. So that came into my mind.
That song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm friends with, good friends for a long time now with Matt Berry, who's an actor, a comedian.
Matt Berry, yeah. When I was reading it in the wiki, it came up Matt Berry, yeah.
Yeah, and Matt's, if you look on YouTube as well, there's some great footage of Matt in Josh Home's studio, because him and Josh Home are very good friends. And when I was in London with Duckworth Lewis Method, Matt was filming one of his sitcoms. It was actually the one with Reeves and Mortimer.
I love this. Oh, yeah.
House of Fools. That's silly one. And
Mortimer. Is that Bob Mortimer?
Yeah, Bob Mortimer. And
he's so funny.
Yeah, he's very, very funny. And I was very lucky to meet Bob Mortimer on a tour I was doing, because we supported Matt Berry, and I did loads of gigs with Matt at the time. But he rang me when I was in London, and he said, "Look, I'm doing the sitcom in BBC, but if you want to come over, we're going out afterwards, and Josh Home is here from Queens of the Stone Age." So they were going out for a drink, and I was lying in bed after coming in on the plane, and there was an ABBA documentary on BBC4, and I was there with a cup of tea and a little bar of chocolate, and I was like, ABBA were on TV, and I says, "Matt, I'm not getting out of this bed to go anywhere." And so I toned down the chance of going out partying with Josh Home and Matt. But it'll happen again. To be honest with you.
Why would you do that?
Well, I'll tell you why. I stopped drinking 12 years ago. And when you're used to drink and party, and then you go out with people who are going to party hard, it's difficult. It's not the nice.
That's a very fair point, actually. Now I know what you mean.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's like
anything. Really.
Yeah,
it's hard not to do something that you want to do when somebody else is doing it.
Well, I've got to say, the power of a cup of tea and a nice ABBA documentary,
and a biscuit, and a tiny little chocolate biscuit,
and a bit. Oh, absolutely, God, you're well ahead of me there. You know exactly what's going to tempt you.
One thing that I remember: the chocolate biscuit.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, I've been in some of the most swankiest hotels in the world, and like £20 for a tuna sandwich and things like that. And I just walk out to the Spar and get a couple of bars of chocolate and a nice sandwich for £2, ham and cheese, and go back to the room.
And it would be nice. It would be just as nice.
No, it's nicer. Oh God, it's nicer.
Exactly.
So, always remember your roots and remember your, that kind of fun element of things. But yeah, so Duckworth Lewis, I'm still in a bit of shock about Shane Warne, but sure. we just did it as a bit of fun because me and Neil
I was
Hannon.
kind of thinking that must have been a bit of quirk. Like, I know you were doing this gig for Alzheimer's, right? And like you bonded with Neil Hannon during that. So once I read that, I kind of went, even if I didn't know about the Duckworth Lewis Method, I knew that something was going to come along later. Because like, you guys, what I was reading, you guys seem to really enjoy working together. And like, Duckworth Lewis Method, oh my God. In my opinion, they're probably one of the best bands about sports in the world that I know of. They're amazing.
Yeah, we certainly, it was just one of those things, you know, I could, well, I will be around music kind of anonymously for most of my life, but for that period of time, it was just very nice to get involved in something that was quite unique. And
it wasn't to make money, it was just to have fun.
Well, no, it's never about, even Neil, who makes a lot of money because he's a very talented man and he's done a lot of very famous things. The money is great, but he never gets up in the morning and writes a song for money. I mean, it's just not. It's just not what you do as an artist. I mean, you can get a job where someone says, "Can you write a song about a sheep?" And you know, I'll give you £10,000, and I mean that's great because that's just a job then. But the actual motivation for doing it is never money, never ever money. It's just about trying to write the best song in the world ever, because that's what all artists, real artists, want to do. They just want to keep writing better songs, and that's why people say, why is Paul McCartney still playing at 80 years of age? And they don't have a clue, because it's what he does. It's his job. It's his life.
To do with making music, actually. Can you tell us anything about your new album?
Oh yes, of course. It's gone really well, and I can give you an exclusive. I have a couple of people on it that you wouldn't probably think of Pugwash, but Joe Elliott from Def Leppard sings on one of the songs.
You got someone from Def Leppard, wow.
Yeah, and Joe was a big fan of Pugwash, and he's a great friend, and he just did a bit of vocals, and I'm going to go to Abbey Road, the famous Abbey Road Studios in London, to record strings in April, an 8-piece string quartet, whatever they're called, 8 players and a conductor, and we're going to do the session there for the whole day.
Do you have a name for the album, actually?
I don't. I can't give you that exclusive because it's not written in stone yet. But I love all that, because you know that what happens is, because the recording's not finished yet and it's still being recorded and it's still in the process.
Yeah.
But one day I'll just be listening to something, or I'll just be talking to someone and saying, "Yeah, that song means that," and then I go, "Oh, Aliens from Dundalk, that's the name of the album." You know, it just could be anything. It won't be called that, by the way. So you know, it's not going to be called Aliens.
And then like later in this year, I just search up Pugwash, and then it comes up new release, Aliens from Dundalk.
Yeah, exactly. That's a terrible name, but that's how it happens. The weirdest thing can just kind of could just click in your head, and it seems to sum up everything that's going on with the record in your head, and you go, yes, it's that, you know. So all my album titles had a bit of spontaneity, a lot of spontaneity with them, but I always think of something like the Olympus Sound, which was an album we did that was nominated for the Choice Music Award, and it was my biggest selling album in Ireland and most successful. And I recorded all the demos on an Olympus dictaphone, and I just had a little dictaphone at the time, and I recorded all the demos on this little Olympus thing. And one day I was listening back to a demo, and I said, it has that Olympus sound to it, you know, like the machine, and that was it, you know. And I just thought the Olympus sound, that's a great title. So that became that. And of course the artwork is always very important as well, but that's a whole other thing. So
just going, wasn't your last album in 2017?
2017, yes. And that's why 5 years is way too long for someone like me. But of course, we've had 2 years of a horrible pandemic, you know, even
It's going,
more.
it must have been hard for you and during the pandemic with all Pugwash and stuff.
Yeah, it was great to be able to do all that. I did like nearly 100 online shows, and I did loads of
That's the other thing though, live shows. And a lot of people watch live shows as well
yeah,
as gigs.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm one of those people who I love a lot of bands who didn't play live, like XTC. I'm a big XTC fan, which is
Yeah.
a band you should get into. They're wonderful, and you know they were famous because they stopped touring in the 80s because the lead singer uh, took a kind of an attack on stage, a panic attack, and just didn't want to play again. And I could understand that because, you know, I've suffered with panic attacks since I was a kid and all that kind of stuff, you know. So life can, you know, you can kind of go, oh yeah, I can relate to that stuff. But then
Yeah.
one day I was about 18 and I set up this covers band to make money with friends of mine. And I had such fun playing live that I was just like, okay, I can love bands that don't play live, but I actually do love playing live. So I was thinking I might be one of those artists who doesn't play live, sits at home and makes their music. But it's just not, it just wasn't me. I really wanted to play live because I loved it. So I love playing live. I play live all over the world when I can. Just before Christmas, when lockdown was lifted, I went to America to do like 10 shows in houses. And yeah, so the fans get me over. They pay me so it's sustainable to be able to travel
Yeah.
and I had a brilliant time playing to people again after 2 years, 2.5 years. And especially America. America is a very brilliant place, which I hope your parents will get you to America at some stage, or you'll go yourself eventually, because you'll love it. It's a fantastic place. So so things like that are very important, playing live. But I just really, during the pandemic, I didn't write. I'm not a person who got inspiration from lockdown. It was the opposite for me. I didn't want to do anything. So, but then eventually last year, I just kind of went, "Ooh, something's happening." It's like when you want to throw up. You know that feeling when you go, "Whoa,"
Yeah.
and all of a sudden then you can't control it. So music, songwriting is like that with me. It's like musical vomiting. I can't control it a
You
lot of
just
times.
can't live without making music.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of time where you think I'll never make another song again. I'll never write another song again because
And then two
that's
days
what happens.
later, it turns out you're in a studio recording a song.
Yes,
I know.
exactly, and that's
I
why.
make my own music on this little
It,
device I
yeah,
have.
do you play? I mean, I've seen the guitar on the wall there, but do you play or do you?
I'm learning guitar. Like I know a good bit on guitar, but I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
I'm still learning some of this. But what I use is on my computer. I attach this little thing up to my computer.
Oh, what's that?
It's a little MIDI lab they call it, and it's like
Is it a little bitty? Oh,
I
it's
connect
fucking
this
cool,
up,
then.
and I play this. Let's say it'll play through the laptop.
That's
That way,
brilliant.
and then I can also program buttons to play like samples and loops. And I can
Yeah, I
turn
was
up
just looking. It looked like a case. It looked like an actual carry case, but it's actually a real little keyboard. Very nice.
It's actually loads of people use it. It's really handy. And they're not hard to buy, and they're
Yeah,
extremely low priced. They're really good.
and so are you keyboards mainly, or are you guitar as well? And
Oh, guitar! I love guitar. Like I sometimes play the keyboard. Like I don't learn piano, but I kind of mess about with samples. And
yeah.
like with guitar, sometimes that kind of gives me an idea of what I can do. Like I know that the black keys are minor, the white keys are major. That kind of helps as well.
Well, brilliant. And it looks like that's a cool mic. What's the mic you have there?
I got this for Christmas one year, and I tell you, we were on a wild goose chase trying to find loads of other parts for it. It's a massive gear for music studio mic. So that goes
Yeah,
very
nice.
long. So they will be using like studios, and I use them for pure radio and stuff. And it's really good quality. And the wires are really handy as well because they're not all over the place.
Yeah, it's quite compact. Yeah, very nice. Well, I on the demos for this album, I bought a Tascam recorder, which is I used to have a Tascam tape recorder in the 80s, and I loved it. It was something I demoed hundreds of songs. So if you look around the internet, you'll see loads of my demos because I had to sell them eventually to kind of survive during the lean times, you know. And I had fans who wanted to hear them, so it was great to be able to release them and put them out as well. But I never thought anyone would hear my Shed demos from the 80s, you know, in the 90s. So,
by the way,
so
did I ever tell you that, you know, the way you signed a deal with 1969 Records or something?
yes,
Well, Spotify made a mistake on one of the albums, and they were about to put in the record label, and they made the year 1969 by accident. So
I only saw
your
that.
oldest album was released in 1969.
I'm one of the greatest songwriters of all time because I wrote a very, very good album when I was 1 month old, according to Spotify, because I was born in 1969, and you know, unless I did it, you know, between August and December.
That's very.
Yeah,
I looked
brilliant.
at it and I went, okay, so he's obviously around 40 to 50.
Yes.
That can't be right.
well done on your mathematics, because I'll tell you, that's hilarious, because I hadn't noticed it, and some fan said, "Did you release an album?" You know, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? The 60s?" Jeez. And but yeah,
and then you
it's
just
like,
checked your phone. Oh.
and the thing was, I was like, "What are you talking about?" So I just looked at Spotify and I seen 1969 release date, and I'm like, what the fuck? So yes, they did a stupid thing, but sure, that's what happens when a company that really isn't music centric, as they say, you know, their knowledge isn't there. Their knowledge is just online streams or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, anyone would know. Well, anyone with a music knowledge would know that I couldn't have made
an album 1 month old.
But it's such a big thing. But it's funny though, you know, and I don't mind, you know, it's not going to stop anybody finding it, I suppose. But yeah, so it's a funny one, I have to say, because I would have been a child genius. Let's put it that way.
I can only imagine you writing songs at 1 month old.
At 1 month old, yes. Well, I made a lot of noise when I was a kid, but you know, it wouldn't have been anything that was releasable. So.
Yeah, and it just shows the baby ears. Bang, bang, bang.
Yes, I do have. I found recordings. I mean, I used to want to be a DJ when I was a kid. So, like yourself, that's what's brilliant about what you do, because I wanted to be exactly what you're doing when I was that age. I wanted to be able to. So I used to do my own little radio shows with a tape recorder, and I'd say, this next song is from, you know, Elvis Costello, and it's this, and then I put the needle on the record and play the record, and then it would come to an end, and I go, that was Elvis, and I take it off, so I had my own little radio station, and
I once had a tape and I was recording it, and it was so funny, and then I'm listening back because I was 8 when I first started the radio, and I was listening to it, and I felt so cringed out.
Well, it's your voice. You know, your voice is obviously getting, you know, it's over the years it'll get deeper and it'll do all that, you know. So you listen back and you're like, you know. So that's always funny, yes. But you know, you'll love listening to them one day when you look back, you know. So it's all great, you know. And I'm delighted they're using cassettes, because I love cassettes as well, you know. Cassettes would always give me a lot more bass. So when I was listening to,
Yes, I had on my thing bass, double bass, and double bass.
yes,
And when you had it on double bass on the radio, it sounded so good. It
yeah,
sounded insane. Unfortunately, I don't have that stereo anymore because the old Philips stereo kicked the bucket just one day, started to fault, and then it fell down.
okay.
But
Well,
it's
back,
a very, 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 it's very, very good double bass. And
yes, gotta love the bass. And the thing is, but back in them days with record players and systems, the very early days, record players were built into cabinets. So basically, because you can talk to your mom and dad about this, so basically you'd have something that looked good in the room. So it would have four legs, it would be long, and it would have doors either side, and the record player would sit in the middle, like sunken into the little cabinet.
yeah,
So you could close all the lids and use it as a table and all that. But if you open the doors, you'd get less bass. So a lot of people would leave the doors shut on either side, and it would sound really bassy. So that was how you got extra bass in the old days. You'd leave the door shut on the cabinet. So
that's actually a very good idea.
yes, so when you went into the 70s and 80s, they have little Dolby buttons
Yeah,
and bass boost buttons, and they were great because if you took them out, it would sound like very thin, and then you press them in and boom. So they became just buttons then, as opposed to shutting doors. But I mean, if you have if you have a record player there, when you shut the lid or whatever, it sounds bassier.
unfortunately though, my thing, if I was like, I could do it with a single, but the way albums are bigger on LPs. Well, my
Yes.
record player can't close with an LP in it.
Yeah, so it's outsized. Yeah, I
Kind of
understand.
annoying.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the speakers are on the outside of the case as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So if I did that, it wouldn't do anything.
No, it's true. I have some really beautiful vintage record players called Dan Sets. And again, when you get to Google some night on a Dan Set, it's DANSETTE. You'll fall in love with them because they were so beautiful and they sound so great. And
Yeah.
I have some vintage ones with legs, the four legs on them, and you screw them in and you stand them up and you just play your records, and it's mono and it just comes out the front. But all those 60s famous records, like the Beatles and the Kinks, and they sound so great on these machines because they were made for these machines. So
like when you're putting them on the new ones, they're very bad quality.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. A lot of them.
It's not because in comparison on that thing, do you know what it's like? It's like if someone says something and you say that's the wrong answer, you make them feel dumb. It's like the record player is making the little record feel a bit dumb.
Yeah,
because it's not good quality. And that's the thing.
Exactly.
You could buy the most expensive record player in the world, and you can buy the cheapest. And it might turn out that the cheapest is better.
Ah, yeah.
Because it's apparently now, if you got good looks and you put the title on record player, you've got it, and you put it up for a good price, you'll get it. If you put on record player and it's not stylish, but you just put it up for low money, you won't get it.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking back to back in the 60s with the Beatles. They released a song called Paperback Writer, famous 1966. They released this song, and because they wanted, Paul McCartney had bought a new bass, a Rickenbacker bass. He wanted to really hear the bass on this song, so they were starting to be very inventive with the sounds, but they still only had vinyl, obviously, as the way to release the song. So he asked the engineers in Abbey Road to put the bass up a little louder. So they put the bass up loud on Paperback Writer. It's a very famous song with great bass playing. But what happened with a lot of people's old record players is that the bass was so loud it would jump the stylus, so the needle would jump off the record.
No way.
So people started
No
bringing them
way.
back to the shop saying, you gave me a faulty record, it's faulty and blah, blah. And they were saying, no, it's not faulty, it's just,
The
you just have
bass
to
is really loud.
lower your bass a little and it won't. So it actually made the needle jump off the record. So they
The
had
needle wanted to dance.
exactly, the needle wanted to dance. And then in the 80s, the Human League,
Yeah.
you know the Human League, don't you want me?
Yeah, like I think I know them too. Like I usually, what happens is if I hear a song and I want to listen to it all the time, I'll get the name. If I like the song, if I really love the song, I won't get the name. So when I listen to it on the radio, it's like a treat.
Yes.
Very special.
Yeah,
And I
very
won't
good.
know the title or anything.
Well, they had a song called Louise, which was released in the mid-80s. And the video is very funny, actually, because it's a double-decker bus pulling skids and driving real fast. It's very good. But on the song, they used a keyboard effect that sounded like it was warped. So it was like, it was all kind of warpy. And that was the effect they went for. It's great. It sounds great. But so many people went back to the record shop in the 80s and said, this record is warped. And they were bringing them back in their thousands. And the people were saying, no, it's not warped. It's just the way the keyboard is sounding. And well, no, it's warped. So I always love that as well, because it's good when you can mess around with people's ears when it comes to music as well. I like doing that as well.
Like, usually music can be lots of different things.
Yeah.
And usually it can sound differently on different things. My favorite type of song is a double bass song, usually, or a song that's been on a tape for around 40 years, is on double bass, there's a crinkle in the background, and there's kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but it sounds more, the sound is more compact.
Yeah.
But you can't hear it perfectly. It sounds like you're deaf in one ear. It sounds a bit weird. I love songs like that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, that's what music does. It's such a, it's endless, really. I mean, I still play songs now, 50 years after or 40 years after I heard them, and they still give me the same feeling as I got then. And that's the magic of music as well. So you've got loads of great bands to find, and you've got loads of great music to hear.
Exactly. Like I asked
so that's exciting.
I asked my dad one time, how many bands are there in the world? And he said, nobody knows.
No, it's like how many?
Every day there's a new band coming out. More than one band. And some people want to make it big and they don't, and they're upset about it. And some people want to make it big and they don't. They're actually fine with that.
Well, that's the thing. That's another thing I'll say to you is that you'll probably find your favorite music were bands that never really made it.
Yeah.
Bands that just released a few records and they were known about a little bit. But I've so many bands in my collections that made one record or a couple of records and then they just split up. But they were great records.
I have a band that's exactly what you just said. So the hit Tub Thumper.
Yes.
That was by Chumbawamba.
Chumbawamba, yes.
Have you ever heard any of their stuff like Slap and stuff?
Well, this is the thing. I know Chumbawamba released a lot of records, but they're only known for that song.
Exactly. Like they released an album called Slap. Oh my God. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah, well, that's great.
The likes of other albums like WYSIWYG that they released and stuff, they're horrible.
So you're a Chumbawamba, a bit of a fan of that record.
Slap is amazing, but the problem is it's not on Spotify, it's not on Deezer, it's not on iTunes. You can't buy it as a CD and golden discs. You can only get it on like adverts and stuff like that, if you know what I mean. Or another app called Discogs.
Discogs is very important. Yeah, Discogs is great.
Yeah, I remember a lot of kids yeah, they'd go onto their laptop, they'd play video games, they'd watch videos and whatever. I'd sit down looking at Discogs for about half an hour, just looking at different albums. And I always thought the best type of album is a limited edition album.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it, and it's like special that you think, wow, I'm one of the only people who know about this. I'm one of the only people I ever had this. My dad has an album called Pearl Harbor by Joy Division.
Yeah.
Blue vinyl. It costs so much. It's not sold anymore. There was only, I think, 200 copies released in Europe.
Wow.
And that was normal vinyl, and he has a blue vinyl version of it. They're extremely rare. It's so rare that I think my dad and I, the first time we played it was with me, because my dad wanted to play it with me to show me what is this album like. And I think so far we've only played it 3 times.
Yeah.
I don't want to get it scratched because it's so cool.
Well, you know, it could get you a new car when you grow up. You know,
I'll be asking Dad, do you mind if I go to the attic for something so I can get a new car or possibly even a villa?
Yes, exactly. Well, I've definitely got a few records in my collection that I could have a nice holiday off, you know, and go and do nice things, but they just mean a lot to me, you know.
Hard copy. You could get a song on Spotify and it would be amazing. And then you could get a song on hard copy and you can't get it anymore. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, that's the thing.
If I had Slap and it cost loads of money, I wouldn't sell it because it's just such a good album.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I probably would not sell it because I'd wait a little longer so I could get more money for it.
That's true.
But mainly because it's a good album. And it's more about music more than anything.
Well,
music's amazing. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that.
No, well, they don't at all. It's great to hear you acknowledge it. But I have a Beatles acetate, which is like a one-off kind of pressing of a record of the song "Get Back," which is like obviously the new movie has been really successful. But acetate, so it's only 5 or 6
on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Did you watch it at all?
I don't usually watch documentaries that much, but like anything to do with music, I would watch usually Kerrang, or sometimes I'd watch other things like that. I think I've watched like some YouTube documentaries. I very sure I watched a documentary on something, but I forget who it was. Oh, ZZ Top, that's who it was. I watched a documentary on the ZZ Top one on Netflix.
Yeah, that's very good. I watched it as well.
Those 3 beardos are amazing. But there was one thing that was very saddening a little while ago. Dusty.
Yeah, the bass player passed away.
Poor old Dusty. Isn't that him? Dusty,
Yeah, Dusty, yeah. They're a great band.
When I heard it originally, I went, oh, he died. And then about a week later, I realized he died.
I know, yeah.
It kind of takes a long time for it to get to your head that someone like that died.
No, he wasn't, like he was 75 maybe or something like that.
He lived a long life. He didn't die in vain or anything. He got a good life out of it.
I mean, he was still a young man in today's world, but they looked so cool because the beards covered so much, you know, like himself, I suppose. But you know, they looked.
We've got a bit of a connection there between ZZ Top and Pugwash there now.
Well, they looked 30 years ago. They looked the same, so people think they're still the age of 30 years ago. So that's why when he passed, it was a bit of a shock, you know. But they were, you know, they're going a very, very long time, you know. So, but you know, they're a great band, and that's a great documentary. The actual band called The Band, which was Bob Dylan's backing band. There's a great documentary about them as well. There's some really great ones. The Laurel Canyon one was very good. The place in Los Angeles where all these famous Neil Young and Graham Nash and David Crosby, all those great James Taylor, Joni Mitchell.
I just remember something there. So you were saying with Bob Dylan, I don't like Bob Dylan now that much.
That's okay.
Like a couple of his songs I like, but my friend Thomas told me, because he's into music, because his brother loves music, and he said, oh, I'm into Led Zeppelin and someone else, and Bob Dylan, and he said to him, listen to the rest of them, but not Bob Dylan. And it reminded me of a time that one time this guy that I know on the radio, he bought a record of like Supertramp, and
Cool.
he went into a bar or something with his dad or something, and a man told him, I'll take that Supertramp album. Buy any other album, just not Supertramp. Don't listen to them. And the guy doesn't have the album, and the DJ never got the album back. But
Well,
it's a nice memory to have, that you just
yeah.
go, at least someone knows what you're buying.
Well, normally with when you hear stories like that, it's normally with bands that polarize people. So they make people angry, or there's fans that love them. So they're normally bands that are very successful. So Supertramp are very successful back in the day.
Yeah,
so
they were massive.
Yeah, so
They
they had
were
a lot of
massive.
people who, but then again, you have rap artists now and hip hop artists sampling all their stuff. And
That's the
because
annoying thing. Samples now, they're taking over music. Like I originally got this thing called groove music. It was like you could press buttons and it would make all your songs, everything. And then I got BandLab, which is another thing, but it's not like
okay,
that. It's actually making music. And I got the little yoke that I was showing you.
yeah,
And I said to myself, groove music
samples are
is
great.
not the way to make music.
No,
It's
but
just not the way.
because because it's abused, but it is a brilliant idea, and I love lots of great samples. I mean, we did it in Revolution.
Actually, yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. Wasn't that the trumpet in that was a sample?
Yes, so
Yeah, at the start. You could hear that was a sample, but that was the nice thing about it. That's
well,
why
yeah, but Neil, that's the thing when you hear something and you go, well, I could use that in a song. That's a talent, so that's a good thing, and there's no harm in it at all. Just making albums full of samples is just lazy. But Neil had this. It was a guy called Bix Beiderbecke. It was a very famous
Spiderback.
Bix Beiderbecke, Bix, and then Beiderbecke.
You can imagine, like, we're just going for the rest of the interview. Bix Spiderback.
Yeah, I know, because it's one of those names. But I'll tell you, in the 20s and the 30s in America, he was a very famous trumpet player, brass player. And the thing was, that was the time of prohibition when they banned alcohol. So he famously would play in bars that would have illegal hooch, as they called it, illegal beer and illegal stuff. So there were all these little bars where they were hidden away and the police didn't know about them. And he played
like a what's that thing? A she-bean, like a she-bean.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Jeez, And so yeah. So,
God, I shouldn't be saying that.
no, yeah, stuff. But the thing is, he famously died because he drank lots of illegal alcohol and he poisoned his body. So he died when he was 32, I think. But he released all these great records, and one of them was called The Rhythm King. And it's basically da, 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 da. That's the song.
Yeah. And you
Neil,
put that in.
Yeah, Neil really liked it. So when I went down to Neil's that day, he says, I have this loop. He says, I made this loop of a Bix Beiderbecke song. And I just don't know what to do with it. And it was like, da, 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 da. So we spent the day working on it. And Neil says to me, can you go home and write the entire history of cricket in 4 minutes? And I went, no. But I went home and I had a thought about it, think about it. And I came back to Neil and I had written loads of lyrics with the history of cricket. And he said, it's too much. And I says, well, the history of cricket is 500 years of history. But then I thought about it again. I went, okay, bullet points.
Bullet points, yes.
So I went princes and lawyers, played with the English elite. So that was that's how it started, and years of repression, started a noise from the street. So it was all these kind of building up to cricket becoming what it became. So that's the kind of, and that was one of the earliest songs we did. So that was a good,
Yeah.
a good kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a good litmus paper test
Yeah.
to how we could actually make this into a record, because
I was reading something there, and I think, were you working on the album when, let's say, sorry, when you were doing the Age Revolution? Because I know what happened was you released that as a single with Neil and the band, and then a week after you released the debut album, and then like I think it was 2013, I don't know, Sticky Wickets, and God,
Sticky
when I
Wickets
saw
2014,
the album cover of that, I asked my dad a good bit of questions on that there. But when he told me that it was real, I gave him a look for a second, and I finally realized that that's what pitch invaders.
Yeah, streakers, as they were called.
Yeah.
And the thing was, we met that guy, and it's incredible. He's easily one of the most boring men I've ever met in my life, because what he did was, in 1975, during a test match, he got drunk with his friends, and they said, why don't you take your clothes off and run onto the pitch? Because it was a big thing in those days to do that. Women did it, and of course you'd see all the wobbly bits, and then men would do it and you'd see all the wobbly bits. And on the TV as well, they didn't cut away. So if you see it nowadays on Sky Sports, if someone runs on the pitch, they don't show it to you. They always cut away to, like, you know, the crowd, the crowd or whatever it is. But back in the day, you know, the cameras would just zoom in on the people, you know. And his name was, this is the incredible thing. His name
You can imagine just somebody, if, let's say this was happening now and they still done it, someone's just at home watching a match and they've got the mouse and they're literally clicking the screenshot one like thousands upon thousands of times.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So his name is Leonardo fucking da Vinci or something.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. His name is some famous name, and he's just an English guy. But we used that picture, and then he got loads of publicity from the actual picture. But it was great times and a lot of fun and a lot of silliness, but you know, it was my most successful period really, and I got a deal with Sony Publishing, so all my songs are still published by Sony Music and stuff. So I made a lot of friends in England, and it was very, very beneficial for my career. So
yeah,
they were great times. And you know, the people still ask about doing gigs. I mean, we were going to do some shows, but you know, around the time of COVID, we were thinking of doing some shows, and it just happened then. That's the way life can be. So that's the reality of it. But yeah, well, it's still something we'll do. We'll go back one day and maybe do a show, and we can see you there. We can bring you along, and you can see us play live.
Yeah.
But
with Pugwash, do a lot of people come to your gigs?
Well, honestly, in America, yes, we get some great turnout, and places like Spain and parts of Europe and England as well is very good. But Ireland is a bit shit, you know. Pardon my language, but it's you know, Ireland has a specific, like, I'm one of those artists who they all want to hear about me when I go away and work with Jeff Lynne or Ray Davies from the Kinks, or Brian Wilson says something about me from the Beach Boys or something, and they all go, "Wow, that's amazing." And then, you know, they still don't invite me to play at festivals and do all that, because I don't fit into the kind of Irishness.
Which is extremely sad, because you're such a good person in the band, to be fair.
Oh, well, thank you very much. But honestly, I've gotten over that many years ago, because I'd go to festivals as a guest of like some of the headline acts. So I was good friends with the guys from Air, who were a very famous French band. Their stuff was brilliant.
Air,
Yeah, great. Well, I'm glad you know them. They're brilliant. But they were headlining the Electric Picnic or whatever it was 20 years ago, and I went as a guest because some members of the band I've worked with, and they were saying, well, I just had an album out, Almanac, which is my second album.
Yeah.
I always remember them saying, why aren't you playing this festival?
So that was in June 2009. Almanac was released. So was that in around then?
No, Almanac was 2002.
Oh yeah, sorry, 2002. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were playing they were touring with I think it was the 10,000 Hertz Legend album they were doing, and I just said to them, I don't know why I don't play the hometown festivals, but it was very embarrassing to be, because the guys were going, we love your album, we play it in the van, we play it in the bus when we're touring, and why aren't you playing yourself? And I was like, I don't know. Question, because I have to go and have my dinner.
I have to go now as well, and I don't. Well, I'll just. Where did the Pugwash name come from? Just a quick question.
Well, yes, that's a quick question. Well, it's very simple. It was an old cartoon called Captain Pugwash, and he's available on YouTube. If you put him in, you'll see him. But it's a silly name. I never really liked it, but it's the one that stuck. It's the one that stuck, and I kind of look like him as well. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But look, it was great to speak to you.
Yeah. I'll see you, Thomas. Thank you so much for spending all this time. We've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes now.
That's no problem. You just have to put it together now and release it. So that's your hard work. But tell your parents, thanks very much. And I'll say hello to Graham for you, because I'll see him in a few weeks.
Bye.
See you, mate.
Have a great day, Thomas.
Same to you. Bye-bye. Bye.